Everything you know about money is about to be exposed as a lie. What if tomorrow morning you woke up, checked your bank account, and discovered $1 million sitting there? Not just you, your neighbor, your boss, the person who cut you off in traffic, every single adult in your country, and every single adult on earth. $1 million overnight for everyone. Most people would celebrate, quit their jobs, book flights to places they've only seen on screens. Finally breathe. Everyone feels free. But here's the thing about freedom. It's almost never what we imagine it to be. And what happens next isn't a utopia, it's a nightmare. To understand why everyone becoming a millionaire would destroy civilization, you first have to understand what money actually is. And most people have no idea. Money isn't paper, and it is not numbers on a screen. Money is transactions. That's it. That's the entire secret. When you hand a cashier a $20 bill for a sandwich, you're not exchanging paper for bread. You're exchanging trust. The cashier trusts that the bill will be accepted by their bank. The bank trusts that the government will honor it, and the government trusts that you'll pay taxes. Everyone trusts that the system holds together. This trust is built on one thing above all else: fake scarcity. There's only so much money in existence. That's what gives it power. If money were infinite, it would be worthless. If everyone had endless amounts, nobody would work, nobody would produce, nobody would trade. And yet, we've built an entire global economy on a foundation that most people don't even know how it works. Money is a story we all agree to believe, and stories can change overnight easily. Now take a look at this. In 1971, President Richard Nixon did something that changed the world forever. He announced that the United States would no longer exchange dollars for gold. This meant that for the first time in modern history, the world's reserve currency was backed by nothing except the full faith and credit of the American government. Pure trust, nothing else. Some economists called it madness. Others called it inevitable. But everyone agreed on one thing: money had fundamentally changed. From that moment on, governments could create money out of thin air. And they did. Trillions of dollars, euros, and other currencies, all appearing from nowhere in a single day, and yet the world didn't collapse because the trust held. But trust is fragile, and it breaks when everyone suddenly has everything. The illusion shatters completely. Now let's run the experiment. Tomorrow morning, every adult on Earth wakes up with exactly $1 million in their bank account. No fraud and no inflation, just a new balance. The first reaction is joy and freedom. Unfiltered, overwhelming joy. People cry, people dance, people call their families. Social media explodes with celebration videos. For a few hours, it's the happiest day in human history. Then the calls start coming. People calling their bosses to quit. People calling travel agents to book flights. People calling real estate agents to buy houses. Other people calling dealerships to order cars they could never afford. Within hours, every airline website crashes from traffic. Every luxury hotel is fully booked for the next 2 years, and every house listed for sale receives hundreds of offers above asking price. Wow, what a disaster. By lunchtime, stores are empty. Not because people are panicking, but people are celebrating buying everything. Luxury watches, electronics, wine, groceries, literally everything. And that's when the cracks begin to show. The store owners look at their registers and realize something terrifying. They have all this money, but there's nothing left to buy. The supply chain has collapsed. Truck drivers quit. Warehouse workers quit. And every factory employee quits. Why would anyone work for hourly wages when they're millionaires? By evening, the first shortages appear. No fresh food deliveries, zero gasoline at the pumps, no medications at pharmacies. People start driving to other towns, searching for anything left on shelves. But those towns have the same problem. Everyone has $1 million, everyone wants to buy, but nobody wants to sell. Because selling requires production. Production requires work, and work requires motivation. And where is motivation when everyone is already rich? Here's where it gets truly dark. Economists call it the wealth effect. When people feel richer, they spend more. But when everyone feels equally rich, the game changes entirely. Think about the basic rule of economics. Prices aren't determined by how much money exists. They're determined by supply and demand. And right now, supply is crashing while demand is exploding. Let's walk through a single loaf of bread. Before the Great Millionaire event, a loaf cost $4. A baker bakes it, puts it for sale, and uses the money to buy flour, yeast, water, and pay their workers. Now, the baker has $1 million. They don't need to bake bread. They could retire. And so they did. The flour supplier has $1 million. They don't need to grind flour. So they retire. The farmer has $1 million. They don't need to plant wheat. So they retire. Suddenly, there's no bread. But there are still billions of hungry people with millions of dollars each, and they're desperate. This is where the invisible hand of the market becomes a fist. The first person to hoard bread realizes its true value. They paid $4 for it. But now there's no more bread coming. They could sell it for $40, $400, $4,000, and someone will pay. Because $4,000 to a millionaire is nothing. It's pocket change. So prices rise and rise and rise. By the end of the first week, a loaf of bread costs $10,000. A gallon of gas costs $50,000. A bottle of water costs $5,000. Welcome to hyperinflation. But this isn't normal hyperinflation. This is hyperinflation on steroids. Now the chaos truly begins. Let's look at history. In 2008, Zimbabwe experienced hyperinflation so severe that the government printed a $100 trillion note, $100 trillion, and it couldn't buy a loaf of bread. The economy collapsed. People starved, the government fell. In 1920s Germany, hyperinflation meant people needed wheelbarrows full of cash to buy a single loaf of bread. Savings were wiped out. The middle class was destroyed. And out of that chaos, something darker emerged. When people lose trust in money, they lose trust in institutions. When they lose trust in institutions, they lose trust in each other. And when they lose trust in each other, civilization unravels. That's the real danger of everyone becoming a millionaire, not poverty, not inequality, the destruction of trust itself. While everyone else is panicking, there's a small group of people who remain completely calm. The 1%. Not because they're evil, not because they're lucky, because they understand something the other 99% don't. Money isn't for spending, it's for investing. Let's go back to the morning of the Millionaire event. While the world celebrates, the 1% aren't dancing. They're thinking. They know what's coming before it arrives. Within hours, they've moved their cash into assets, gold, silver, land, art, cryptocurrency, stocks in companies that produce essential goods, anything that holds value when currency becomes worthless. They understand the fundamental rule of wealth. Cash is just a claim on real value. Assets are the value itself. Now watch what happens next. The majority of people wake up with $1 million and immediately start spending. They buy cars that lose value the moment they're driven off the lot. They buy houses at inflated prices from sellers who know desperation when they see it. They buy luxury goods that have no practical purpose. They spend their million on things that will be worth nothing tomorrow. The 1% do the opposite. They buy things that produce more things. They buy companies that produce food, water, energy, medicine. They buy farmland that will keep producing regardless of what happens to the currency. They buy intellectual property that can't be inflated away. They buy skills that become more valuable as the world falls apart. And here's the lesson that changes everything. Wealth is not what you have. Wealth is what you keep. Let that sink in. The $1 million in your account isn't wealth. It's an opportunity. What you do with it determines whether you stay rich or become poor. The 1% understand this better than anyone. They've studied the pattern. They've watched the cycles. They know that every boom is followed by a bust. Every party is followed by a hangover. Every flood of money is followed by a wave of destruction. And they position themselves accordingly. This isn't speculation, it's history. Because they know that no single thing is safe. Not cash, not gold, not stocks, not real estate. Everything is vulnerable. But everything at once, much harder to destroy. This is called portfolio theory, but it's really just common sense. Don't bet everything on one horse, because that horse might fall. We don't judge our happiness by our absolute wealth. We judge it by our wealth compared to others. If you have $1 million and your neighbor has $2 million, you feel poor, even though you're rich. If you have $100,000 and your neighbor has $50,000, you feel rich, even though you're not. This is why the world's happiest countries aren't the richest countries. They're the most equal countries. Finland, Denmark, Norway. These nations have high taxes, strong social safety nets, and relatively low inequality, and they consistently rank as the happiest in the world. The United States is far richer per capita, but has much higher inequality. And the happiness rankings tell the story. We evolved to compete, to compare, to climb hierarchies. So if money can't make us happy, what can? The answer is uncomfortable, because it requires work. Not work for money, work for meaning. What if you started building the life you actually want? The life that doesn't require $1 million to be complete. The life that has meaning, purpose, connection, and growth. That life is available right now. Not through money, through choice, through action, through relationships, through contribution. You don't need $1 million to be rich. You just need to realize that you already have everything you truly need. And that's only the beginning. The next chapter is even more unbelievable, because if everyone became a millionaire tomorrow, we would learn the hardest lesson of all. Money isn't the answer. We are. And the answer has been inside us all along. The end. What did you think of this documentary? What would you do if everyone became a millionaire tomorrow? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you made it this far, you're the kind of person who thinks differently. The kind of person who wants to understand how the world really works. If that sounds like you, welcome to Ascend. The journey has only just begun.